Hello there, I'm Sarah, your natural endometriosis expert. Welcome to my podcast. This is the place to be for information, advice and tips on managing your endometriosis naturally. I've been managing my own endo now successfully for about 20 years, and I've been running my own therapy business since 2008, helping others to do the same. If you're curious to cut through all the noise and rubbish that's out there and learn the key to managing endometriosis with minimal reliance on drugs and surgery, then this is the only podcast you'll need. Let's get started. Hello there. So in this episode we are going to talk about period shame. For those of you who don't know, period shame is essentially where you feel embarrassed about being on your period, embarrassed about bleeding, and it is surprisingly common. It is incredibly important when we talk about conditions like endometriosis that we factor in period shame into the treatment process. Every woman that I've worked with has an element of period shame, and that connection to your body, that connection to your bleed is massively important if you're going to overcome your endometriosis. So period shame is completely overlooked in terms of Western medicine, and even in Eastern medicine, alternative medicine, it's still not really given the prevalence that it should be given. When we talk about period shame, in fact, there was a recent poll in America that found out, I think it was 58% of women at some point had felt some embarrassment because they were on their period. And I think it was 43% of women also reported that they had been subjected to period shaming. So people making comments about periods and basically shaming people because they were on their period. And that's absolutely, well, it's disgusting, but it's so important that we overcome this stigma and we overcome this barrier. There should be no embarrassment. There should be no shame when it comes to bleeding. People wouldn't be on this planet if it wasn't for the fact that women have periods. And that's something that should be celebrated. It should not be hidden from the world. And you certainly should not feel ashamed of your periods. And it's kind of quite, well, it's not, I was going to say surprising. It isn't surprising. I actually think the figure of 58% who said they'd felt a sense of embarrassment about periods, I think that's actually probably quite low, because when I was thinking about this topic, I kind of, so for those of you who don't know, I've been managing my own endometriosis for 20 years, and I kind of thought that I'd got this period thing down. I've kind of worked on my relationship with my womb, I've worked on my relationship with my cycle, and I thought I was pretty positive about my period. But then when I was kind of reading up about this, I kind of remembered back to when I haven't worked in a workplace for a long time, but when I used to work in a workplace, I would either take my full bag to the toilet, or I would put my period pad up my sleeve so that people wouldn't see what I was carrying. And when I read an article a while ago now, it was sort of saying, well, one element of period shaming is the fact that a woman can't feel confident just picking up a tampon and walking to the toilet with the tampon quite visible. And I thought, crikey, yeah, even though I was kind of quite positive period positive, I still used to hide the fact that I was going to the toilet because I was bleeding. And it's really that kind of really hit me hard. How many women actually in a crowded place, in a restaurant, a bar, in a workplace, would feel comfortable carrying their period product in full view of everyone? Now, I've worked on this, obviously continually working on this, and I think now I would be quite okay with that. I use reusables now, so it's not probably the done thing to be wielding that round an office, but I wouldn't have a problem people knowing I was on my period now. But how many people can confidently say that, yes, if they were bleeding, if they were having their period, how many people could confidently walk to the toilet carrying visibly their period product in their hand? And I was actually chatting to a lovely lady about this the other day, and she said, oh, crikey, I don't even take my full bag to the toilet because I know if I take my bag to the toilet, people will realise that I'm on my period, and I just don't want people to know. And there is an aspect of this that it is a personal thing. We don't talk about bodily functions like perhaps we should do, and not just periods, but every bodily function. We don't talk about them as we should. So there is a bit of a stigma around personal bodily functions anyway, but that shouldn't apply really. To be honest, we should talk about poo a lot more. We should talk about wee a lot more. We should certainly talk about periods a lot more. What I find when we're talking about severe period shaming as well, so if you have flooding, if you have particularly long periods, then actually you've got an element of shame from other people. So there's the element of, oh my goodness, what if I bleed through? What will people think? It's disgusting. You're kind of putting that shame on yourself as well. So as well as period shaming from other people, you're putting that period shame a lot on yourself, and that is really unhealthy. It's not a good way to view your cycle. Your body has a trauma response to shame. So if you are feeling shame about your period, you are in effect telling your body that this is something you don't want your body to do. So your body, when your body reacts to shame, and it is a trauma response, your body tries to minimize the thing that's causing the shame, that's causing this trauma response. And if that is your period, if you're telling your body that when you bleed, it's a shameful thing to do, your body has inbuilt responses that try and stop it happening, because essentially it doesn't want you to feel that shame. It doesn't want you to feel the fear and all the emotions around the period. So you're kind of holding on to your period. In effect, you're kind of stemming the blood. Now, it's not massively obvious. It's not something that your body just doesn't say, oh, right, okay, I'm just not going to do it, then your period stops. But actually, in some cases, it can really impact on the severity of your period. It can impact on the pain. It can make the pain worse. It can sort of stifle the flow. So a lot of times when we're getting that sort of grey, murky discharge at the end of the period, that's stagnant blood. So a lot of that is being held on to for various reasons, but one of those reasons is sort of the body not wanting or not freely discharging of the blood. And if your response to period shame is a massive trauma response, that is an element, or it can be an element for people, of holding on to the blood. So it's massively important. It's not just an emotional response. It can turn into a physical response, and it can impact on your period. So this is why we really, really need to talk about period shaming. We need to talk about periods. It's quite funny. I talk about periods a lot. Whenever I'm talking about my business, I talk about periods. I go to networking groups, I talk about periods, and quite often I will apologise to the room if I'm going to talk about bleeding. And I had to have a little bit of a look at myself as well. Now, I apologise because in the same way that I would apologise, normally when I go to these meetings, they're kind of over a lunchtime or breakfast time. So I kind of apologise because I'm about to say something about blood. And I don't apologise because I'm talking about periods, but I do apologise in the same way that I would apologise if I was talking about poo over the breakfast table. But actually, I'm going to stop apologising, because even though I'm not apologising for that reason, for the reason of it being a period, I'm still apologising. That's still getting into people's minds that I'm about to talk about something that isn't pleasant. And actually, our periods should be celebrated. Talk about periods to people. Talk about period products to your partners. Talk about periods to men. Just talk about it as if it's normal, because it is. It's a normal thing. It's a beautiful thing. It should not be any element of shame around your period at all. And as soon as we start thinking of it as something to hide, something to be shameful of, we are disconnecting slightly from our cycles, from our wombs. We are telling our bodies that our body is doing something that it should be ashamed of. And that has a traumatic response, that has an inbuilt trauma response. That body will respond, and that body will try and prevent the feelings of shame happening. So, ladies, next time you're bleeding, celebrate that bleeding. If you feel comfortable, and I hope you can feel comfortable, pick up your period product. Walk to the toilet with pride. Do what my dad does. I don't know if my parents listen to this podcast. If they do, Dad, I apologise for what I'm about to say. See, I'm apologising. Bodily functions. Do what my dad does. Sunday paper, picks up a paper. Right, I'm going to the toilet. I'm going to be 15 minutes. No shame there. We should have that same no shame approach to our periods. I'm going to the toilet because I need to change my Moon Cup. Other brands are available. I'm going to the toilet because I'm bleeding. Okay, you don't have to be as overt about that, but talk about it. Don't hide it away. It's so important. It's really, really important. If we are going to change the narrative around endometriosis, about fibroids, even around menopause, we need to be openly talking about women's health. So don't shy away from talking about it. Don't think it's something that people don't want to hear. And yeah, maybe some people will feel uncomfortable. Maybe some people will try and shame you for having a period. But just very, very gently remind them they wouldn't be here if women didn't bleed. It's a fundamental part of our existence. It should be celebrated. It's one of the beautiful things that make us women women. And actually, a lot of women can't bleed. There are various reasons why not, but a lot of women don't bleed. So for those of us who do bleed, we should celebrate that. It's a privilege to have a period. So talk about it, celebrate it. Let's break down that stigma. Let's stop period shaming from being a thing. And if you do feel a little bit shamed, don't be ashamed of the fact you've got period shame. Just try and change it. Do it gently, connect to your womb, tell your womb you love her, tell your bleed that you love her. I do think that reusables, especially cups, are a fantastic way of really connecting to your period. Before I used them, I thought the idea was pretty horrific. I've been using them for years now. Can't believe I didn't use them years and years before. But if you don't already, just try it. Try it for a couple of cycles. It will connect you to your period like never before. You'll realise how much you bleed, how little you bleed. You will just be connected to that bleed, but it makes it so much more of an enjoyable experience once you're connected. So ladies, get rid of that shame, celebrate your periods, be period positive as much as you can, and if you need any help, please do drop me a message. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope that you found this podcast helpful. If you did, please hit follow so you can listen to more, and please also share it with anyone else who you think will benefit. And don't forget, if you're looking for women's health treatments, workshops or support within your workplace, you can find all of my services, including our monthly virtual clinic, over at www.healthywomen'shealth.com. I'll see you next time.